Hi guys. So today's video is going to be a non-spoiler book review and then a spoilery chat for the book Strange Practice by Vivian Shaw. I'm going to stick with the non-spoiler stuff first, and the premise for the book is that it follows this woman named Greta Helsing who runs a clinic that specializes in the treatment of the undead. The creatures that she treats vary from vampires to ghouls to werewolves, all those different kinds of things, but they are not known to all of society. It does take place in what's supposed to be modern day London, but it's not like all of London knows that these things exist. When the book first starts, Greta goes to treat a vampire and then all of a sudden finds out that there is this kind of murderous group of people going around who apparently do know about the existence of the undead and other various peoples, and they're out to try and exterminate them. That all said, when I first went into the book, given that the synopsis tends to make you believe that Greta is the main character and we start off primarily with Greta, I thought that the book was going to be, if not all in her point of view, at least the majority of it in her point of view, and it's not. It's actually kind of a multiple point of view story. I love a good multiple point of view story. I just wasn't expecting that with this one, and I don't know if you are all like this too, but there's something about when all of a sudden you go to a different point of view and you thought the book was going to be sticking to one person, you're kind of like, oh, that's not a fault of the book, it's just a general heads up. Also, the book, while it is technically supposed to feel like modern day, it doesn't feel like modern day. I think this was due to a couple of different variables. One being that the writing is fairly formal, and that includes the dialogue. The dialogue most of the time felt fairly formal, and I think part of that was because some of the characters are supposed to be vampires and they've been around for a while, and so maybe they speak a little bit more eloquently than your average everyday person. I also think it's partly to do with the fact that our main character, even though she's human and she's fairly young, she's still older than some of the main characters we see in books. I believe it said she was in her 30s. Plus, she is a healthcare professional, so she's working in a field where, generally speaking, you might be a little more poised. So I think it was done intentionally, but it almost just felt like it could have taken place in the 1950s or something, and there wouldn't have been that much of a difference. I mentioned a second ago though that the writing is fairly formal, but it's not dense at all. I think if you're looking for a quick, kind of fun read, that this one would fit into that category. It is not something that is difficult to figure out what the heck is going on. It's not like it used tons of medical terms or anything like that. It's just kind of a modern, interesting take on humans and vampires and other things of that sort. One last thing I want to point out about the book before I get into the spoiler portion of the video is the kind of sort of excessive amount of ellipses, italics, sometimes parentheses, although those weren't really excessive. Some people really hate those things in books. I am not one of those people. If they're done every now and then, it doesn't really bother me whatsoever. In fact, I think it can be used to enhance a story, but in this book, it did lean on the maybe excessive side for me personally, and I went ahead and took a picture of one point in the story. I circled whenever there's italicized words or ellipses, things of that sort, on this one page, just so you can get an idea of kind of how frequently it's used. A really easy way to get around dealing with this, if those kinds of things drive you crazy, is to just listen to the audiobook. The narrator is fantastic. She has a very sexy voice, if I do say so myself. That's it though for the non-spoiler portion of the video. I'm going to start getting into a little bit of spoilers and a little bit of a chat now. So a fair amount of you who watch my channel also read this book because it was the October buddy read, and I tried not to look too much at what a lot of you were saying because I didn't want it to sway my thoughts toward the book, but once I finished the book and I started going through what you guys were saying, a lot of you were pinpointing the exact same things that I thought. I mentioned it in the non-spoiler portion, but this did not feel like modern day. And when I was looking through it, I saw somebody else said the same thing. I was like, oh, I'm not the only one, because I was reading it and I kept forgetting. I felt like a total idiot because I was reading and I'm like, wait, she has a car? The car thing wasn't that weird. I think the weirdest thing was when they made reference to YouTube. When they made reference to YouTube, I'm like, okay, so this is literally happening now. It's happening now. And at one point she mentioned, I think toward the end of the book, that she was still using some equipment that was from 2009 or 2006. I'm like, girl, that wasn't that long ago. Weirdly enough, the only times they did kind of sort of sound more modern is when they would just drop F-bombs. Given how proper they were a lot of the other times, whenever somebody would curse like that, I would be like, oh dang, that girl's got a little bit of a potty mouth. Honestly though, that's really not a big deal. It didn't ultimately alter the story. It didn't change the story at all because maybe they talked a little bit fancier than I was expecting. I did really like Greta, and I think Greta was the most relatable character because she was the character we got to know the best. But was anybody else kind of wondering, I felt like her and the one vampire she'd been friends with for a while, they seemed to have more chemistry than her and the other one that she helped at the beginning. I'm forgetting all their names now. I literally just read the book and I can't remember anybody. Ruthven and Varney, I think were their names, but there were some interesting names in this book, by the way. Festiticalan, however you say that guy's name, I was like, fast. Every time I got to him, I was like, the guy whose name starts with an F. But the other two vampires, I just felt like the one and Greta had a fair amount of chemistry, except for I think he was almost fatherly. The one demon man was, I guess, more of a father figure in a way, or a grandfather figure. And then the one fancy schmancy vampire, Ruthven, that liked to go shopping and stuff, that one I guess he also was sort of a fatherly figure, but to me it felt more like she had some chemistry with that guy than with the one vampire that was like, this woman saved me and I'm obsessed with her now, and she thinks my voice is lovely, so maybe something will happen. He definitely seemed like he had an interesting backstory though, but it didn't get explored really at all, and maybe it'll get explored more in future books. But this first book wasn't necessarily driven by character development at all, and I really like that in books. But weirdly enough, I don't know that I would describe it as plot driven either. Maybe I take that back. Maybe it is plot driven, it's just that there wasn't a set antagonist that we got to know, and that could be because it is almost like a murder mystery, so you don't really know who the antagonist is. But I couldn't have guessed who the antagonist was either, given that the antagonist is this leftover energy that gained some level of sentience from the time of creation, which our characters didn't really get to organically find out. It's not like they solved the mystery and through all the clues discovered that this was what was up. It was that the devil stopped by and was like, we would have gotten to this eventually, but thank you for getting to it fast. And I don't know why I'm making the devil sound like that. But regardless, had the devil not shown up to give us all the information that we didn't yet have, we would have never gotten it. And the only reason the devil showed up was because guy whose name starts with an F accidentally summoned him when he died, which the devil put him right back together, so wasn't a sense of loss whatsoever. He got to go to the spa in hell to rejuvenate, and then he came back at the end, so all was fine. But he left that kind of important bit of information out when he left to go solve these problems, and him and Greta parted, which I feel like he should have let Greta know, and he told her, I thought you knew, which was, to me, a little bit of a plot hole, because he can read minds, so shouldn't he know that Greta doesn't know that he can just be restored easily? Anyway, I think that this book has a really fun premise. I think the premise is really fun, and I love the idea of the fact that they can't go to the authorities to help solve these problems, and they have to kind of try to figure them out for themselves, but they have various weaknesses that normal humans don't have, and so this little gang of random misfits has to come together and try to solve all the stuff. I thought that that was a really fun premise. I just don't know if the execution was necessarily up my alley, but I am definitely really interested in hearing if it was up yours. Which, up yours, that's not the greatest way to end that sentence. Let me know your thoughts on the book. Let me know what you thought of it overall, what you thought of the characters, what you thought of the pacing, anything like that. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.